Good morning, or pardon me, good afternoon, everyone. Just finished the weekly cabinet meeting. I wanted to provide an update for the gallery and for British Columbians. Firstly, I want to acknowledge that we're here on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nation. And I want to thank the vast majority of British Columbians who, over this past long weekend, managed to find some time to be with their families, managed to do so in a way that kept themselves away from their neighbors, kept themselves away from other British Columbians. It was a wonderful weekend, and we have more weekends ahead of us. But it was a celebration, it seems to me, of what we've been able to accomplish as a community. And Dr. Henry and Minister Dix will be providing an update on our modeling here in British Columbia later in the week, and I'm hopeful that when British Columbians see the progress that we have made collectively on flattening the curve, again, we have a few days to go, and Dr. Henry is overseeing that project. I believe that people have cause for genuine celebration and a pat on the back collectively and virtually, I should say, for the work that we've done together to flatten the curve. But we still have more work to do, and therefore the Cabinet today reaffirmed the state of emergency, extending it for another 2 weeks, ensuring that all British Columbians stay the course. We all focus on the task at hand, and that is protecting ourselves, protecting our families, protecting our communities from this scourge of a virus and the pandemic that is seizing the entire world. And it's always useful to remind ourselves that it's not just British Columbia, it's not just Canada, it's not just North America that is gripped by this. It is a global challenge. And therefore, when we look at all of the issues that are before us, we need to do that locally. We need to look at it provincially, and then we need to look across the country and then around the world as we come out from underneath this. I want to acknowledge the good work of public employees here in British Columbia, working with federal officials at our border crossings since we implemented our plan to ensure that every British Columbian returning to BC had a self-isolation plan. 4,700 travelers have come back. They've filled out the appropriate forms, and only 84 of those 4,700 are in quarantine, being supervised by the federal government. Our border plan is working. I'm grateful for the help we've had across the way from local communities, from the Public Health Office, of course, and also the federal government. But the challenges remain, and we need to focus over the next couple of weeks on maintaining the course, ensuring that we're doing everything we can to stay distant from each other, to continue to wash our hands as much as we possibly can, try and not touch your face. Those who are essential to our economy continuing to move, particularly those frontline healthcare workers, again, our thanks. Every night at 7 o'clock, my spouse and I and my neighbors are out banging pots to make some noise for you, and thank you for that important work that you're doing. We had the local firefighter with his siren going last night, and I hope that it's going to be a regular occurrence. And if you can hear us in Langford, you can hear us in Lanceville, you can hear us right across British Columbia. So with that, I'll happily answer any questions that you may have.
A reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to get in the queue and unmute your phones. You won't be audible until we call your name. The first question is from Lisa Yuzda.
Right off the top, lucky me. Premier, looking at how restrictions, distancing measures, limiting access across the province has worked here, and that we're seeing other places across Canada follow suit, do you rue not taking more stringent steps sooner, and wondering why that didn't happen, because clearly they're working and other people are following? And also, why did we not procure more materials, raw materials, for doing the testing sooner?
Well, we were leaders in Canada. We identified the challenge here back in January. Other jurisdictions were slower to follow suit. We did procure as much as we possibly could at that time, but we are not the only people in the marketplace. And as you know, with any supply-demand situations, if you're on the wrong side of that request, you may be in a queue before you get the equipment that you need. Our PPE issues were critical. They're starting to resolve themselves. I give thanks to Premier Kenney and the people of Alberta who provided us with 250,000 N95 masks out of their stockpile, and they were also generous enough to help Ontario and Quebec with not just N95s, but also with gowns and other surgical requirements. So we as Canadians are pulling together. There's a joint procurement process being coordinated by the federal government. We have many irons in the fire, whether it be for testing equipment, whether it be for PPE, and we're going to continue to be ahead of that requirement. So far, so good. I take, again, my guidance from Minister Dix and his very capable team in the Ministry of Health, and we're in a pretty good place today, and I hope that continues.
Our next question is from Justine Hunter.
Oh, hi, Premier. Some money that was approved last month by the legislature was supposed to be for recovery plans, and I'm wondering what signals are you looking at to guide how and when we will begin to ease up on the current pandemic restrictions?
Well, we're looking at a variety of issues across government. Minister Fleming is working with stakeholders in the education system to get the online learning working in every corner of the province. We've seen some really good success, and again, a level of collaboration between educators, superintendents, school board trustees, parents, children, the whole continuum of components of our K-12 system working cooperatively to try and find a way forward through this virtual period, and also having those preliminary discussions about how we would, if the curve continues and we get positive signals from Dr. Henry and the modeling in the weeks ahead, that we would be able to look at bringing kids back to classrooms. But I look at my colleagues across the country who set arbitrary dates for a return before the data was in, before the science was confirming that, and we're not going to follow that lead. We're going to look at the numbers as they emerge over the weeks ahead before we make those determinations. When it comes to other components in the economy, of course, the capacity in our acute care system is robust. That's at the cost of those elective surgeries that we very, very regrettably, Minister Dix and I and the entire government were frustrated that was a step we had to take, but an important one. And I think that will be a place where we will start to look at moving more people back into our acute care system again when the evidence presents itself, so we can do that. When it comes to other elements of the economy, what we've been trying to do, Justine, is to not shut down everything. There was a lot of talk about lockdown this and lockdown that. Other jurisdictions use that language, and then they publish their exemption lists, which were sometimes pages long. What we've tried to do is make sure that we have safe workplaces, and that's having our WorkSafe minister, our WorkSafe staff, coordinating with public health officials to make sure that we can ensure that work can carry on in British Columbia, whether it be in the construction sector, whether it be in public transit, and so on. And we'll be able to start things up, I think, because of our early start to prepare for the pandemic. I think we'll be in a better position when the restart happens. But that's what part of what the Economic Recovery Task Force is talking about weekly with Minister James and Minister Mungal and I, as well as the conversations I'm having with industry leaders, sector by sector, with the environmental community, with the agriculture sector, forestry, and so on, to make sure that all of the stakeholders have an understanding of where we're going, and that when the start-up begins, sometime in the not-too-distant future, again, when the evidence presents itself, I think we'll be in a good place. But we're planning for that and have been planning for it for a number of weeks, making sure that the lines of communication between the players, labor, industry, communities, are as robust as they can be.
Our next question is from Keith Baldry.
Good day, Premier. Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart just wrapped up a news conference, which again he reiterated his need for $200 million or so, roughly, from the provincial government. You've got TransLink saying yesterday they need $75 million a month from both either provincial and federal governments. That's a lot of money. What's your response to requests like this?
Well, certainly I'll start with the City of Vancouver. Municipalities across British Columbia are seeing a decline in their revenues to meet the services that they deliver, or to provide the services that people expect in communities right across the province. And that's a challenge that Minister Robinson has been working on, regular contact with the broader Union of BC Municipalities, the umbrella group, for all municipalities in BC, regional districts and others. But she's also been going mayor by mayor, region by region, hearing people's concerns, hearing their needs, and we're developing proposals that Minister Robinson and Minister James will be talking about later in the week that will be helpful. But again, I don't dismiss Mayor Stewart's concerns, but those concerns are echoed right across the province, and we are still trying to figure out where we go as a province, where our regions need support, what we can ask from the federal government. I had a conversation again, as I do regularly, almost nightly, with Chrystia Freeland. We talked about BC Ferries, public transit, whether it be BC Transit or TransLink. These are vital components of our economy. They may well be public transportation entities. The debate about the state of BC Ferries, is it a Crown corporation or is it a private company? You'll get different answers depending on who you ask on that question. But these are critical components of our economy. We cannot continue to operate even our essential services if we don't have public transportation for our nurses, our care aides, and other providers. So whether they work in retail, in grocery, or other sectors, if we can't get them to work, we will fail. So we're working with the federal government, we're working with TransLink, with BC Transit and the partners within BC Transit to find a way forward. But I think, again, I want to caution all British Columbians, we are making this up as we go, as the problems emerge. The evidence from TransLink yesterday was graphic for the public, and we need to get our heads around that, not just governments and funders, but the traveling public as well. And we need to find those solutions by working together. I'm confident we'll be able to do that.
Our next question is from Rob Buffum.
Hi, Premier. I'm wondering, you expressed sort of optimism about how well we're doing as a province, flattening the curve. And I know in terms of restrictions, it sounds like you're not able to weigh in specifically about dates, but in areas where there have been fewer numbers of new cases, like, for example, Vancouver Island, has there been any ongoing consideration of reducing restrictions or easing restrictions in those geographic spots?
Well, that's a very good question, Rob, and we are looking not just at the province as a whole, but the health authorities, whether it be Northern Health, Interior Health, the Island, or Fraser and Coastal Health, because the circumstances within each region are different. Similarly, when you look across the country and you look across North America, circumstances are different, and some of it has to do with weather. I lived for a time in Eastern Canada, and I appreciate how people in winter months are anxious to get south. The spring break was earlier in Ontario and Quebec, which meant more people were traveling, which meant more community transmission was the result. And so we've seen some serious numbers there, particularly in Quebec, that we're not seeing in British Columbia. And that is directly attributable to having a provincial plan at the beginning put in place by Dr. Henry and her team. We followed that meticulously, and we're seeing the benefits of that program. But we're not finished yet, and Dr. Henry will be presenting more data today and detailed modeling on Friday. But the evidence is positive to this point, as you say. Slow growth on Vancouver Island, slow growth in the north, but Interior Health, Coastal Health, and Fraser Health still see an unsettling number of new cases and hospitalizations. We need to manage that, and that's the objectives that Bonnie put forward for us to follow. And it's a credit to all British Columbians who, the vast majority, overwhelming majority, polling numbers. I know media will have access to polling data. Companies are putting it out all the time. The level of support for the initiatives that we're doing here in British Columbia and in other provinces is off the charts. It's just unheard of in our society. We like to disagree as Canadians. We do it pleasantly, we do it politely, but at the end of the day, we've seen almost universal support for these initiatives, and that's the strength of our success, is the strength of people's resilience here to stick with the course, and that's what we intend to do. We may amend as regions dictate, but at this point it's a provincial-wide approach, and that's at the direction of Dr. Henry and the science behind these initiatives.
Next we have Binder Sajan.
Hi, Premier. I've heard you say several times that that the province has the backs of British Columbians who are in need. I spoke with a small business owner who was just starting up his business last week, who doesn't qualify for CERB because, in part, his income the previous year wasn't high enough for him to qualify. So then he doesn't qualify for the provincial program either. I'm also speaking to people who are seasonal workers who say that they don't qualify for rental support because they're a few $1,000s over the top end of that. Just wondering, I know you've alluded to more help is on the way. When can we expect to hear more about financial supports available to people? And is there a mechanism for people to follow up with the province or someone to see if they can get some help?
Well, firstly, I want to just say that BC is the only province that put in place a program for renters. I think that that's appropriate. I encourage other jurisdictions, and I've done so in our regular conference calls with premiers. It's critically important that people have secure housing at a time when we need to stay close to a home. For the hard-to-house and marginal groups, we've seen initiatives like here in Victoria, Mayor Helps and her council looking at innovative ways to try and find housing or appropriate spacing for those who can't find a roof and are living in a tent or outdoors. I've tasked Minister Shane Simpson to focus not just on the downtown east side, but particularly on those areas where there are vulnerable populations. He's working across government with Minister Darcy on mental health and addictions, with Children and Family Development, with Melanie Mark, who represents the area, the Minister of Advanced Education, all trying to pull together to find those people who are falling between the cracks, whether it be marginal populations or individuals like you suggest in your question. And before we could address those who are falling through the cracks, we needed to find out who they were and how many there are. And now that the federal government is adding seasonal workers to their inventory, again, just announced this morning, keeping pace with the federal announcements is a major challenge for our finance people as they bring forward, as the federal government brings forward programs. We're looking at how we can complement those and try and capture those individuals that are falling through the cracks. A small business operator, someone who's just looking this spring at a new adventure, a new challenge in their lives, their professional lives. Starting a business is always exciting and always very challenging. In these circumstances, of course, it's devastating. You put a lot of effort and energy into starting up and you don't get to open your doors. So we have to look at those individuals on a case-by-case basis. I encourage people to contact their local member of the legislature, contact their members of parliament. We have people working all the time. The legislature doesn't need to be sitting. The House of Commons does not need to be in session for elected representatives to be there to listen to concerns in their communities and then feed that into the processes either at the federal level or at the provincial level. And similarly, I know mayors and councillors across the province are also the front line when it comes to delivering services. If people feel that they're not getting what they need at any of these orders of government, they should just shop it around. And I don't mean that in a look for the best answer. If you're not getting the answer you need at the federal level, certainly approach your MLA, certainly approach your council or your mayor or your regional district. The only way we can build the programs is if we hear about it, and the best way to do that is through the vast number of elected representatives we have here in BC.
Our next question is from Tanya Fletcher.
Hi, Premier. Just going back to talking about, the optics, and you mentioned how BC intentionally didn't use the lockdown language and looking at other provinces. But looking at it through the lens of this morning, Dr. Henry confirmed that around 1% of the BC population has become infected with COVID. So given that it's 1% of the population, can you tell British Columbians that the closures, the layoffs, the economic hardship has been worth it?
Well, I believe it has. And when you see the modeling on Friday and look at the modeling that was done a few weeks back, you'll see that were it not for these measures, the outcomes would have been far different. Were it not for the collective effort of British Columbians, we would have seen a different outcome. And that's obviously transparent when you look to the south of us in the United States, where there are extraordinary numbers of deaths, numbers of infected, and still no real understanding of where the virus is going south of us in the United States. We adopted early. We adopted those initiatives that Dr. Henry put before us, making sure that if we were not feeling well, we self-isolated, making sure that when we were out interacting with the public, we were doing it at safe distances, constantly washing our hands, sanitizing wherever possible our workplaces if we're at work or at home. These initiatives made a difference, and stopping mass gatherings made a difference, and that's what the evidence clearly demonstrates. And I think British Columbians, although it's been a very difficult road, I'm not diminishing that. If you look at the results, we should be proud of what we've been able to accomplish, and the sooner we get that curve flattened completely, the sooner we'll be able to get back to a sense of normalcy that we're all yearning for at this point.
Next up, we have Vaughn Palmer.
Afternoon, Premier. The meetings with your Economic Recovery Task Force, do you have any sense at this point how deep the recession is going to go, and do you have any sense of the hurdles that have to be cleared before we can start to come out of it?
Well, thank you, Vaughn. We've looked, and not just at the members of the task force, but we look at private sector forecasters who are rebooting their analysis of what the Canadian economy is going to do, what's going to happen here in British Columbia. You have access to those public documents. I have access to finance, running those numbers, putting up against the models that we have here in British Columbia. And we don't know yet when we're going to be starting to come out of this, not just in British Columbia, but indeed across the country. And example would be our forestry sector. Markets are now contracting at a rate that is unprecedented. Access to our neighbors, compromised by the softwood lumber agreement, but also by just a general slowdown in housing activity there. So we're going to have a buildup of inventory that will be hopefully flying off the shelves in the not too distant future. But that startup on the forestry side is really dependent on markets. The challenges we saw prior to the pandemic arriving on our shores was a market-driven challenge. That market challenge remains, but it's been complicated by a complete shutdown of a lot of activity south of the border and also with our other trading partners. So this is, again, not just about kickstarting British Columbia. We need to see positive outcomes with our markets around the world. As a small, open economy that depends on trade, we need to make sure our trading partners rebound as well. So I've got my fingers crossed for the United States to get it together as quickly as possible. I've got my fingers crossed that we can continue to expand markets to new places and take advantage of the fact that here in British Columbia, we got in the front of this faster than some other jurisdictions. Another example would be the film industry. Film and television just completely shut down, not just in British Columbia, but indeed around North America. And we want to be in a position, based on the initiatives that we've undertaken and the hard work of British Columbians, to say to those who want to restart their filming, whatever it might be, whether it's television, major motion pictures, all of that activity, we want it to come back to BC as quickly as possible. But we need to put in place the building blocks for that to happen. And that is speculative at this point, Vaughn. I could speculate with you, but I'm sure you'll be able to get that done without any help from me. And I don't mean anything by that, but it is speculative at this point. I've talked to Minister Freeland, I've talked to the Prime Minister, I've talked to premiers across the country. We're all focused on this, but we all come at it from a different perspective depending on where our strength was prior to the pandemic. And I think BC was in a better position than some of our other provinces across the country because of our fiscal situation. That's deteriorated, but the natural resources that we have here, the innovative economy that we have here, the tech explosion that has helped us carry on, the value of being in the same time zone as Hollywood, all of those things have not gone away. All we've done is slowed down the economy so that we can flatten the curve. And when we start up again, those competitive advantages will remain.
Our next question is from Eric Zimmer.
Hi, Premier. With people staying home much more now and their hydro bills have significantly increased, and with cars parked most of the time, they're paying for car insurance somewhat unnecessarily. While there's relief from BC Hydro for people who are laid off, is there anything coming from the government for people who are still working from home or otherwise and seeing their monthly expenses change significantly as well?
Well, certainly those who are still working are seeing changes in their expenses. I saw on the way into the legislature today, gasoline is 97 cents here on the South Island. I know it's higher in some places, lower in others. That is a significant reduction in costs for those who are traveling to work. The insurance question is one that we've been grappling with since we were sworn in as a government. The extraordinary moment we're in does not change the fact that ICBC was fundamentally broken when we arrived, and we've been trying to fix it ever since. We have a longer-term solution for ICBC. Minister Eby's been working on that, not just prior to the pandemic, but throughout it. We'll have some announcements tomorrow on some savings, modest savings, but appropriate ones in this environment from ICBC, and I'll leave that to Minister Eby to talk about, and he'll have more to say on the broader questions as well.
Our next question is Eric Chung.
My question has been asked.
Okay. We'll go then to Lindsay Newman.
Hi, Premier. So tomorrow you guys are hosting this Showcase BC concert, and normally, like, a lot of these concerts and stuff feature stuff in, like, Vancouver, Victoria, but you're featuring stuff in the musicians from the north. Why choose to do stuff in the north, and what are you most looking forward to about the Showcase BC?
Well, thanks for the question. And this is an initiative that was brought to government by MLA Bob Deef, who is a musician himself, MLA for Maple Ridge Mission. His neighbor, Lisa Bear, is the minister responsible for tourism, arts, and culture. So I set both of them the task of trying to find ways, as we saw venues shutting down, performers not having an opportunity to perform and to generate some revenue, to keep them going. I know I have a son who's a fledgling musician as well as a teacher, and he is always looking for gigs, and musicians are always looking for gigs. So we felt that if we could find a virtual opportunity to get people making music, to get out there, to be known, to be heard by broader audiences, that would be a benefit to everyone. I'm looking forward to the initiative getting going and then duplicating it from this point on. I don't want to pick a favorite. I learned that as a parent. That's always a bad idea. I learned that as a member of the legislature and a leader when Dirk Meisner once asked me who my top 5 were, and I regret that question for now, 5 years. So I'm not going to say what's going to be the best. It's going to be great. I hope all British Columbians tune in.
Our next question is Shannon Waters.
Hello, Premier. I'm wondering about, we just had this long weekend where, most British Columbians did what they were supposed to do and stay home, but there are some small communities that said they've seen a lot of visitors who probably shouldn't have been there this weekend, and that situation is probably going to get more tempting as we continue to see sunshine and the temperatures warm up. Now, Ontario has taken the step of banning vacation rentals, or is moving towards doing that to make it less appealing, or at least less easy for people to take trips to smaller communities during this pandemic. I've contacted the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. They say that's not a step that's being considered for BC at this point in time. Do you see that potentially changing down the road? And what kind of guidance is the province giving smaller communities for dealing with these situations?
Thank you for the question. I saw over the weekend someone in Toronto getting a ticket for sitting on a bench with their dog. And I just think that's a step too far. Dr. Henry's been very clear. Get outside, enjoy the sunny weather, do it close to your home, do it with your family, and if you are interacting with other people, do it at a safe distance and in smaller groups, no less than, she's been pretty clear on her direction, and I think that's appropriate. The vast majority of British Columbians support the initiatives that have been put forward, and they're acting within them. For that small group of people who are not, I think public scorn is as effective a tool as a fine or a ticket or some sort of prosecution from government. And I've seen people I know well up and down Vancouver Island in small communities encouraging people to not come. Many of these are tourism-based communities, but they understand and recognize that if we're going to get through this, we need to eliminate the virus as best we can, awaiting, of course, vaccines, awaiting for other solutions. But you don't do that by traveling around British Columbia, potentially carrying the virus with you. Working with Premier Kenney in Alberta, Minister of Health there, and Minister Dix have been working directly talking to the people in both provinces, saying stay in your communities. On those border communities, stay home. It is not appropriate to load up the Winnebago and put the mountain bikes on top and head to cottage country. It's just not appropriate at this time. If we need to take stronger action than the scorn of your peers, we'll do so. But I believe at this point, and I look at the data from the weekend, and the example, of course, is BC Ferries. 92% reduction in travel over the long weekend. That's a signal that people get it. That's a signal that people understand it. But despite that extraordinary number, the 8% that were traveling were not all essential travelers. And they heard it in spades when they came into communities with their recreational vehicles or with their holiday gear looking for a break. All of us are looking for a break. All of us are in this together. And if we need to have stronger measures, we will. As I said, we extended the Emergency Act today. Minister Farnworth will develop those with other public safety deliverers across the province, whether it be the RCMP or municipal forces or conservation officers if they've been tasked with any of this work. But at this point, I believe that Dr. Henry's advice is the appropriate advice. Enjoy the spring days, but do so close to your home. Do not travel unless you absolutely have to.
Next question is Richard Zisman.
Premier, how flat does the curve need to be in terms of restarting the economy? And do you see a situation where British Columbia's economy could be moving and restrictions lifted before Washington State or Alberta or other Canadian jurisdictions?
Well, I believe that we are on our own timeline. We have been from the beginning. We saw this early, we've addressed it early, and we will perhaps come up from underneath it early, but the data, the science will direct us in that regard. We will be different from other jurisdictions because of where we are and what steps we've already taken. I think comparing to Washington State is a challenge. A lot of our community transmission was a result of the outbreak in Seattle. And so the border issues were really important to us, and that's why I pushed the federal government so hard. I'm grateful that they're now expanding the program we have here in BC to other border points in Quebec and Ontario, so that we don't have to cross-reference flights from, connecting flights from Toronto into Vancouver to make sure we're capturing all of those Canadians and British Columbians coming home. But these are initiatives that we're taking to protect and flatten the curve. What metric we use, again, I'll leave in the hands of Dr. Henry. The modeling will be available on Friday. She'll be able to talk more specifically about what she's looking for to give signals that we can start up in various places. And it will be a phased-in process. I think Vaughn has referenced that in the past. It's not going to be snap your fingers and we're back to the way we were. That people need to push that out of their minds. This will be a phased-in response, as we've seen in other jurisdictions, and as I expect we'll see in other parts of Canada.
And our last question is from Victor Kaiser.
Hi, Premier. Just curious, I know we've got the Washington, Oregon, California governors forming their alliance of states to deal with the response outbreak there. I know that's, Cascadia comes to mind. Has there been any dialogue with the governors there and a coordinated response? If so, how did it go? If not, any plans to talk to them more frequently?
Well, I have a very positive relationship with Governor Inslee. I haven't spoken with them, and I've lost track of time. I'm in that. My spouse is calling it that week between Christmas and New Year when you never really know what day it is. And I know we're in mid-April, and I haven't talked to Governor Inslee for some time, but I know that we were of the same mind on how we needed to approach this, particularly on the border issues and the connections between the Cascadia corridor, as it's known, between British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and, of course, Northern California, as well as into the south when you look at Hollywood North and all of the film production that takes place here in BC. Those connections are long-standing and they will endure. Have they been strengthened or weakened by the current situation? I think we've all become a little bit insular. I mean, again, as I say, I regularly talk to Governor Inslee, but I've been leaving him alone and he, me, as we grapple with these challenges internally within our own borders. And I think that's appropriate. I think that all of us, as I said, across Canada and across North America and indeed around the world, are addressing this in different ways. The principles are the same, as Dr. Henry's laid them out for everyone to understand. The principles are the same, but where we are in the development of the virus, where we are in responding to it, is different from place to place. You look at California and their response and juxtapose that or put it beside New York, similar sizes. Of course, California much larger, but their outcomes have been drastically different. And I think that speaks to again early detection in Washington State, catastrophic at the beginning because their first exposure was an outbreak in a care home. So you saw significant deaths at the front end. But Governor Inslee and his public health officials got on it right away, again, working not just with British Columbia, but other neighbors. And we're seeing positive results there to the point that Governor Inslee has dismantled a mobile facility and sent it to another jurisdiction where they can use it. So I'm confident that the relationships that we have will endure this. I don't know if it brought us any closer together. Quite the contrary. I think all of us were looking inward. And when the moment comes when we can reestablish those relationships, I'm very much looking forward to seeing Governor Inslee, Governor Brown in Oregon. I've not yet met Governor Newsom, but I look forward to that as well.
Thank you, everyone. That's all the time we have today.
Thanks, everybody.